January 1968, the North Vietnamese launched a surprise attack against American forces. It was during Tet, the Vietnamese Lunar New Year. Tet is the most important celebration in Vietnamese culture, almost like Christmas. It was an unwritten rule or sort of a tradition that no fighting takes place during Tet, much like the ceasefire during the First World War. Except during that year, the Vietnamese thought of breaking tradition by launching a surprise attack on US forces. The Vietnamese thought of catching the US forces by surprise and thought of bringing a swift end to the war. The Vietnamese attacked the US and Allied forces with 85,000 troops, stretched over 125 US and Allied forces target bases in North Vietnam. Many of the commanding officers of the US forces were not even at their posts. They were in the local town celebrating Tet. Here is the interesting thing. The US troops countered almost every single attack from the Vietnamese. After a week, the Americans lost fewer than 1,000 troops, but the North Vietnamese lost nearly 35,000 of their men out of that 85,000. If you look at the Vietnam War, the US lost nearly 58,000 troops over a period of 10 years, whereas the Vietnamese lost nearly 3 million people. The US won most of their battles. Now it raises an important question. How do you destroy your enemy, win the vast majority of battles, and still lose the war? The same thing happened with the Soviets in Afghanistan. It seems we do not fully understand the definition of winning or losing. The above story depicts the example of a failure in understanding the infinite game as well as in devising out a strategy around it. The concept of winning and losing is involved in every sphere of life, in politics, in business, in education, and in our daily lives. If you have at least one competitor, you have a game. There are two types of games, finite and infinite games. A finite game has known players, fixed rules, and mutually agreed upon objectives. For example, soccer. We agree that whoever has the highest number of goals wins after a fixed duration of time. We have a winner and a loser at the end of the game as per agreed upon rules. The game has a beginning, a halftime, and an end. In an infinite game, however, there are known and unknown players. The rules are changeable, and the objective is to carry on the game or keep the game at play as long as possible. When a finite player faces a finite player, the system is stable, like that of soccer. When an infinite player is pitted against an infinite player, the system is also stable. Take the Cold War, for example. We could not have a winner or a loser in Cold War. Both the US and the Soviets kept the game at play from their end. Problems arise, however, when you pit an infinite player against a finite player. Then the system is not stable. The US were fighting the wrong war in Vietnam. The US forces were fighting to win the war, whereas the Vietnamese were fighting for their lives. The same thing happened to Soviets in Afghanistan. The Soviets were playing to win, and the Mujahideen were trying to keep the fighting as long as they could. Results? The finite player finds himself in quagmire. It means racing against the will and the resources to stay in the game. Like we saw in the Cold War, the US did not win. The Soviets just dropped out of the game. By the way, the game or the Cold War is still at play. We know it today by a different name. That is called the Trade War. The only difference is the Soviets have been replaced by the Chinese. The same concept of finite and infinite games exists in the game of business also. Let me tell you an interesting story. The author spoke in two educational summits, one in Microsoft and the other in Apple. In Microsoft, at least 70 to 80% of their conversations were about beating Apple. But in Apple, the 100% discussions were based on how to help teachers teach and on how to help students learn. One is trying to defeat the other, and the other is trying to be a better version of itself. Guess which player is playing an infinite game and which one is playing a finite one? The finite player might run into frustration by racing against the will and the resources, and will eventually drop out of the game. The infinite player, however, understands that there is no winning or losing in the infinite game. Sometimes you're ahead and sometimes your competitors are. The goal is to keep on playing as long as possible. Similarly, there is no such thing as winning in life, education, or global politics for that matter. There is nothing like number one company or number two company in business without understanding the basis of the parameters. But if you listen to the language of most organizations, they do not understand the game that they are playing. Too many leaders are leading with a finite mindset while playing an infinite game. They constantly talk about being the best, being number one, and they talk about winning the competition. The idea of infinite game is that you are only competing against yourself. The objective is to become a better version of yourself today than yesterday. An infinite-minded leader does not simply want to build a company that can weather a change, but the one that can be transformed by it. It's not about being destroyed by fire. It's about getting built and shaped by it. I'll now show you how to play an infinite game with an equivalent mindset. Well, there are 5 things that are needed to play the game along with an infinite mindset, which are as follows: just cause, trusting teams, worthy rival, existential flexibility, and courage to lead. We will be touching upon each one of those in details in the following sections. Just cause. Identify the grand vision behind your organization so that you and your team are ready to sacrifice your blood, sweat, and tears for it. A just cause is a vision of the future that does not even exist, and you will channelize all your energy to advance the grand vision that you have. It will pass on to someone even long after you are gone. In earlier days, Apple had a just cause that an individual can stand against a corporation. Therefore, to cultivate and nurture the just cause, one needs to have a courageous leader too, who can sacrifice the short-term goals in order to advance the long-term goals. Trusting teams. Trusting teams is an environment in which people feel safe to raise their hand and say, "I made a mistake," or "I didn't feel qualified to do the job," or "I need more training to do this job." It is the leadership that is responsible for setting that environment. Leadership is not about being in charge. Leadership is about taking care of people who are in your charge. Get the environment right, and you will get the trusting team. Get the environment wrong, you are forcing people to protect themselves from you. The trusting teams comes from a just cause, which in a way comes directly from the leaders. Not all rank holders are leaders. Rank gives authority, not leadership. Worthy rival. The only true competitor in an infinite game is yourself. What your competition does is reveal your weaknesses to you. The goal is not to be number one. The goal is to create the best version of your team or your organization that outlasts every single person in your team, including you. This is about building strong foundations. This is about looking long term. We buy cars not to fill the tank with gas. The goal is to reach the destination. Money is like that gas, and your vision is your destination. Similarly, your organization is there to stand for something. Money is simply helping you to take you there. Existential flexibility. Back in the days of video renting services, the industry was dominated by a company called Blockbuster. Blockbuster used to charge a fee for every late submission of rented DVDs. At the same time, another company called Netflix came into the picture with its subscription-based model. So the CEO of Blockbuster went to his board members and urged them to look into the new subscription-based model and told them they should also embrace this new model. But the board rejected the idea because they don't want to let go of that 12% revenue that was obtained from the late fees. Today, Blockbuster no longer exists, while Netflix dominates the industry. Lesson: if you don't blow up your own company, the market will blow it up for you. Let us understand existential flexibility with another example. Kodak invented the digital camera and holds the maximum number of patents of digital camera technology. Their earnings from these patents consist of a major chunk of its revenue. Kodak invested money and tried to literally bury the digital camera technology, as they thought the same might affect their camera film revenue. From the day the patents ran out, Kodak has gone bankrupt within 5 years. So what do we learn from this example? Existential flexibility is the capacity to build a strategic shift in order to better advance your cause, and failure in doing so will lead to the end of your own organization. Courage to lead. The things that great leaders need to have are empathy and perspective. These things are often forgotten. Leaders often are so consumed with the status quo that they forget their real job, that is, to focus on the infinite. Sometimes we focus so much on the arbitrary goals in the likes of sales closure and number crunching that we tend to forget our core values, which eventually turns out to be detrimental for our people and organization. It is unbelievably hard to keep in mind the just cause when you are making decisions in the short term. So, have the courage to lead by keeping in mind the infinite goal. These are 5 things required to play the infinite game with an infinite mindset. The lessons in this video are influenced from the book The Infinite Game, written by Simon Sinek. Hope you have enjoyed the video. To get more such videos, please do like and share this video and spread this message among your friends and family. My mission is to spread motivational lessons like these among all. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe and press the bell icon so that you don't miss a single video uploaded here. Keep learning and keep sharing. Ciao and goodbye.